the what I want you to do, let's see, let's go ahead and load these. I think a lot of these we were already using, but what I want you to do is go to it's the Secretary of State page for the Montana election. So it's called montanaelectionresults.gov, and download, let's see here. They have a spreadsheet file that has the election results. It's called, so let's see, we go to election resources and then statewide and county exports and then statewide export. So if you go to that page, go to election resources, then statewide and county exports, and then this statewide export here. And there you can see it downloaded it. And then once you do that, what you'll need to do is upload it into your files here. So make sure you're in files, not packages or something else. And then open that up a little bit and then upload. And then it'll look different on your computer, but basically what you want to do is navigate to the statewide results. And you can see I was playing with it, so I downloaded it a couple times, but you know, you'll get yours should be called statewide results.xlsx, which is an Excel file. And then click OK. And then I want to show you one thing that you can do here. So it should appear down here. If you want to view the file, if you have Excel on your computer, you can view the file like this. And hopefully that will work. I don't know. It doesn't seem to be. Anyway, if you want to click View File, you should be able to open it up in Excel to take a look at it. But one of the reasons I wanted to show you that is that on a spreadsheet file, what you'll see is multiple sheets. And in fact, I want to look at that here. So let's do this. Shrink this so you guys can see this. So this is what the spreadsheet looks like that that we downloaded. And so notice that the sheet that it starts with is the Senate election, which is Jon Tester, who is the Democrat, and he won the election. Rosendale was the name of the Republican, and then a third party. But if you look down here, they have different tabs. So this is called Sheet 1. The one that starts with, and then sheet 2 it was the House election, which is also in Montana, you know, the whole state. And so this has Gianforte, who's a Republican, and he won, and then Kathleen Williams was the Democrat, etc. And so these are the data that I want us to look at, and it has all the counties and all of the number of votes for each candidate for each of the however many 50 plus counties there are in Montana. So what I would like us to start with is the U.S. House race. And so what we need to do, notice that I got this read Excel package, and that allows us to read Excel files. And I want us to load this, I call it House Counties, read XLSX. And then it's called statewide results right here, but I want us to load sheet 2, and that's how you specify that. I'm going to ask you guys to do the Senate election, and so you can actually just delete that, you know, or you can just say sheet 1. If you delete it completely, it'll just do sheet 1. And so if we look at that, I called it House Counties. You'll see there's a problem. Notice that we've got these first several lines that are empty, and we've got this whole like left, this first column here that's got nothing in it. And so if you go back and look at that spreadsheet again, oops, you can see that it actually starts on it's B7. And then what we want, it goes down to let's see, it's E63, and we don't care about the totals because we're just going to look at it by county. So we're going to go to 63 rather than 64. So the whole sheet is, what did I say, B7 to E63. And so we can specify that with this. So what we want to do is just run that again, specify the range, which is only that little part of the spreadsheet that we want, with this little extra command here. And so now when we look at it, see, that looks a lot better now. It doesn't have all that extra junk there. Okay, and we can glimpse it. Now, one weird thing I noticed is that these, if you look at, it says Greg June Forday and then a /R/N. That's a little ridiculous. So what I recommend doing here is just renaming those. So we're going to start with House Counties, and I'm just going to rename. All I did is just copy this long thing here, and then we can call that Republican, and then call this one Democrat, and then Libertarian. So it'll be a little easier, because otherwise every time we wanted to refer to this, we'd have to type in this whole long ridiculous thing here. So so we just call it Republican, Democrat, and Libertarian, and that'll be easier. And then I'm going to save it back into that House Counties. So run that, and now let's look at it again, and notice it's changed now. So Republican, Democrat, Libertarian. Okay, now what I want to do is look at the Republican or Democratic advantage in that county. And since the Republican won, I thought I would look at it as Republican advantage. And so what I want to do here, this is doing just some simple math. I'm going to add up all the total votes, Republican plus Democrat plus Libertarian. So like in this county, we're adding up these three numbers. That's the total number of votes cast. And then we're going to divide Republican by total votes. So what proportion of those votes were Republican? We're going to forget about the Libertarian, sorry. And then subtract that from the proportion of votes that were Democrats. And then round it, we'll multiply it by 100, so it's a percentage, and then round it. So basically that's what that does, and it results in this what I called Repub advantage. And so you can see, and I arranged it so there was one county, this little county of only, it's 681 voters, but the Republican absolutely crushed the Democrat here. It was 600 to 55, so it was an 81% advantage. And if you go down to the other side, then the negative number would mean that the Democrat won. And so Glacier County had, 3,500 votes for the Democrat and then only 1,300 for the Republican. So not quite as big of a blowout. And then you can see in the middle, again, the Republican won. So there's going to be more counties that are, that are positive here. But and Yellowstone was pretty close. It was kind of in the middle, but still the Republican won by 11% in Yellowstone County, where Billings is. Oops. So what I want to do is map this. And so remember, we can get counties with the Census Bureau. And so we do that by specifying geography is county and then state is Montana. And again, we would like to get the population here. And I'll show you, we're going to use that in a little bit. So we're going to get that population of each county, and that'll show us those. We don't want to use the shift because we're not dealing with Hawaii or Alaska, but we're going to just do geometry is true to get the maps of the counties, but no shift. No shift geo. Okay. And then I noticed a couple of weird things. So if we look at Montana counties, let's get rid of this naloxone here and states. If you look at the census data, notice it says Beaverhead County, Montana, whereas in the election, it just says Beaverhead. And so we want to fix that. So all we need to do is just get rid of, basically get rid of county, Montana every time. The other thing that I noticed that was different is that, and this caused me problems, I couldn't figure this out, for a while, but notice it says Lewis and Clark County, whereas in the election data, it was Lewis and Clark with a and symbol, and so we want to change that too. So we just want to make sure that that we're going to join these, right? And so we want to make sure that they're consistent with one another. And so basically, that's what this does. House counties, the 25th row was Lewis and Clark, and so I just changed the and to the and symbol to the and word, and that's what that does. And then this is a little tricky, but basically what I'm doing here is getting rid of that space, county, comma, Montana. And removing those. And then the other thing is we're replacing, we're going to call estimate population. So we know what that is. So basically, I'm just going to go ahead and run that. Now, when you guys do the Senate, you'll have to do the same thing. It's exactly the same issue, no different at all. And so what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to go ahead and join the Montana counties, which was the census data, to the House counties, which was the election data, and just call it, so we make things a little easier, just call it House election, and we can just use that rather than joining every time like we did before. And we can make a little table here, and we can sort on it. And so this basically is the same thing as we looked at above, but we can, like we can search on a particular county name, Yellowstone, and we can look at, we can see 156,000 population, 29,000 for the Democrat, 37,000 for the Republican, 2,000 for the Libertarian, etc. Or we can sort on the most or the least or the biggest counties. So Yellowstone's the biggest county. Let's see, which one got the biggest number of Libertarian votes? That was Yellowstone. Okay, so now we can create this choropleth, and this was, again, this should look familiar from what we did before, where we just had it's this kind of complex thing, but pretty much we're just doing this house election, and then leaflet, add tiles, and then all this code in the add polygons is what sets it to the color, and then this creates the pop-up, and this line creates the highlight of the county. And then we're going to set the view to the middle of Montana, and then let's go ahead and run that and see what that looks like. So there we go. And you can kind of see, so this was, it might have been one of the most Democratic. The more negative, the more they voted for the Democrat. And so the more purple were the more Democratic counties, and the more yellow were the more Republican counties. Now I wanted to, there's two kind of theories that I wanted to test, kind of looking at this map of Montana politics. So one thing that you can see here is that the more east you are in the state, the more yellow it is. You can see that a little bit. And there's a theory that you often hear is that the western part of Montana is more liberal and the eastern part of Montana over here is more conservative. And so we can kind of, I want to test that hypothesis by looking at the location of the county. And the other thing I want to test is that the more sparsely populated the counties, the more Republican they are. And that's another theory. You actually hear that theory nationally, that highly populated states like California and New York tend to be Democratic states, whereas sparsely populated states like Montana or Wyoming tend to be more Republican states. I don't know why that is, but that's it's a national hypothesis here, and so I thought we would see if that also works for Montana. I mean, to me, if you just look at these, if you look at population here, the low population counties kind of have big Republican advantages, 60, 80, 70, right? Whereas if we go the other way, there you start to see some negative numbers, right? So the second most populous Montana county is Missoula County, and that overwhelmingly went for the Democrat, right? And Yellowstone is the highest, and that went for the Republican, but not by as much. So we can kind of test that hypothesis, and I want to try to test both of those. So the first thing is predicting votes from population. So I wanted to create this Plotly graph where I have population, which we got from the Census Bureau, on the x-axis, and then the Republican advantage on the y-axis. And so this should be a negative correlation, right? Because what we're saying is that the bigger the population, the less the Republican advantage. And the smaller, remember, we're saying the sparsely populated counties have a higher Republican advantage. And so, I mean, you can see part of the problem is that so many counties in Montana are low populated, right? And so they're all kind of bunched over here to the left. But it does kind of look like there's a trend, right? There's a little bit of a trend. I'm trying to show this whole graph here, but a little bit of a trend from up to the left to down to the right. And so to test that, I said here that we can add a little extra to Plotly by putting some titles and stuff like that, and having a little bit nicer pop-up that we get. We can see what the county was and what the population, etc. But to really test this hypothesis, we want to use this linear model. We want to do a regression analysis. And what we want to do is we want to try to predict the Republican advantage, so that's Y, from the population. And so we'll call that POP model for population model. And what I said is that doing it the old-fashioned way, we can just get a summary of the model, and that gives us some information. It gives us the slope and the intercept and stuff like that. But I wanted to use this. So you could do that, but I think a more tidy kind of approach is to use this tidy and glance. Oops. And so you can see that's a decent R squared, right? It's 0.20. And so a 0.20 R squared, you can, if you want to calculate that, what's the square root SQRT of 0.1976899? It's 0.44, so that would be the correlation. So if the R squared is 0.19, then the R is 0.44, and that's a fairly decent correlation, and you can see if we look here, we get a significance test, and that's 5.9, but with 4 zeros in front, so 0.0059. So that's definitely a statistically significant predictor of votes. Now, what we want to do here is we're going to go back, and I'm going to take this Plotly graph that I made, and what I want to do is add the regression line to it, and that'll kind of visually show us, if it's nice and slanted from upper left to lower right, then that'll show us, that nice relationship. And so what we can do is take that Plotly graph and pipe in a command called add lines, and then it's y equals, and then the squiggle, and then fitted, and then it's our model, which we call population model. And then I wanted to show you, we can do that here, but I wanted to show you one other thing I wanted to do that I didn't like. So that shows us that nice line. So that's the regression line. It does show a nice relationship. The less populated, the more Republican. The more populated, the more Democratic. One thing else I also wanted to fix is it's got this strange trace 0 and trace 1, and we can get rid of that. It says add show legend equals false inside of add markers. So I'm just going to add this show legend equals false, and then put a comma there before marker, and that will get rid of that dumb Yeah, trace 0. Okay, so that seems to be supported. Our first hypothesis that county predicts county population predicts votes was supported. The other thing, this is a little trickier. It took me a while to figure this out, but basically what I want to do is test this hypothesis that the further west you go, the more Democratic you get. So the more kind of purple here, and then the more yellow over here. And this is longitude. West to east is longitude, north-south is latitude. So basically what I want to do is try to see if I can extract the longitude of, where am I here? The longitude of the county, and then use that to predict vote. And this is a little bit complex, but and I couldn't figure this out myself, but I looked this up and figured out how to do it. Basically what we're doing is we're taking this ST centroid. So the centroid is this, like the center of a region, so the center of the county, and then we're going to extract so the X variable is the longitude, the Y is the latitude, right? And so we're going to extract the X and the Y from the coordinates of the center of the counties. And so anyway, I wasn't quite sure what was going on here, but it seemed to work. I did get this error message. It said it does not give correct centroids, so I was kind of worried about that. So what I wanted to do here is just basically create a quickie map, but then add these, do this add circle markers with longitude and latitude, and just see if we got the center of each county. And it looks to me like it works pretty well, right? So all I did is plot the counties, put those circle markers for longitude and latitude like we did in the dot maps, and it sure looks to me like it's right in the center of each county. So what I want to do then is plot the longitude only against the Republican advantage. And so what we did before pretty much with Plotly. And now this should be a positive correlation, because the more positive, the more east we're going, and the more east, the more Republican we should be getting, right? So, and again, it looks like maybe, right? It looks like it's maybe drifting up a little bit to the upper right from the lower left. Now, again, remember the Republican won in this case, so if you look at the 0 point, most of the dots are above the line. But because most counties were won by the Republican, but still it looks like there might be a trend there. And so we can do our linear model. So here's the linear model. We're going to call it longitude longitude LM, and then do the tidy and the glance. And if you look at it, that's not quite as strong, but it is a decent sized R squared, 0.1, 0.175 or 0.18. And if you want to get the correlation there, 0.1751884, is that right? And so there we got a little bit smaller correlation, but still a correlation of 0.442 is decent, you know. And then it also was statistically significant. So there's the p-value. Longitude predicts voting, and it's statistically significant. So, and then this plots it with all of the titles, and it adds that line as well. So let's do that. And we should see a line slanted up and to the right. Yeah, so there we go. And so that shows so basically, like what county, Lincoln County, you know, like Yellowstone County is kind of in the middle. So I bet yeah, there's Yellowstone County. So kind of in the middle on the x-axis, east-west. Whereas some of these counties should be the easternmost counties. Carter, Richland, Dawson, Sheridan, I don't know. But then these should be the western ones: Lincoln, Sanders, Mineral, Lake, Missoula. Yeah. It would be interesting to try and see if north-south predicted it. I would assume that it wouldn't, right? Because I don't know. Let's go back up here. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's much of a pattern north-south, but anyway. So I think, let's see, is that it? Oh no, I wanted to show you one other thing. One final thing we can do is we can do a multiple regression where we include both population and longitude in a single model and see kind of if they both simultaneously predict the Republican advantage. It could be that, it could be that the more populated counties are further west. And I think there's probably some truth in that, right? And so it may be that it's not east-west; it's really just population. And so anyway, we can kind of look at both of them simultaneously by doing the multiple regression. So let's run that. And so you can see here we've got population and longitude, and you can see they are still both statistically significant. So there is something to it. There's something to both hypotheses. And the overall model had a R squared of 0.29, so that's pretty decent. Now I wanted to show you there's no way that we can do, this is a two-dimensional graph. We just have x and y, but what if we've got 3 variables? So we got 2 x's and 1 y. And I just wanted to show you this. This is a little more just kind of for fun, but you can actually do a graph where you have an x, a y, and then a z. And I'll show you what that looks like. And I just think it's really cool because it's this 3-dimensional graph that you can kind of spin around. And so this, if I can get it to, there we go, about like that. That is a replication of the population by Republican event. So like this, let's see here. Is that right? Yeah, that's the same as this graph here, right? But just looked at from one angle. And then if we spin it and look at, let's see, longitude, if I can get that longitude. So then this is the other graph, right? The longitude by Republican advantage, right? With it kind of going up and to the left. So anyway, it's kind of cool. You can kind of see it in 3 dimensions here. I don't know how useful that is, but I thought it's just kind of a cool graph. So what I'd like you to do for your assignment is basically do that same thing that I did on this notebook, but do it with the tester election, which is maybe even a better example because with the Democrat tester won, but it was really close. It was even closer than the House race. And so pretty much just run through the same thing. You'll need to do sheet equals 1 and run through all of this and do the same analyses. Do the population and the longitude, and then do the multiple regression as well. Okay.